This is Rose and Sword, an essay by Terry Bale, and that's me. So, this is the very last line on page 12, and then I'll go on from there. It's got a lot of pages to go, so I'll try to go quickly, just in case somebody might be interested in this stuff. So here goes at the end of page 12. Solomon, in the Bible, also wrote about the abundance of the rich and of sword stuff. And here is the quote from Ecclesiastes. That's a book in the Bible. Chapter 5, verses 10 through 13. He that loveth silver shall not be satisfied with silver, nor he that loveth abundance with increase. This is also vanity. Vanity means emptiness, useless. When goods increase, they are increased that eat them. And what is the good, and what good is there to the owners thereof, saving the beholding of them with their eyes? The sleep of a laboring man is sweet, whether he eat little or much, but the abundance of the rich will not suffer him to sleep. There is a sore evil which I have seen under the sun, namely, riches kept for the owners thereof to their hurt. End quote. That's Ecclesiastes 5, verses 10 through 13. All of Ecclesiastes, it's a very short book, about 10-20 pages or something. But Solomon saw a lot, and he got it written down so we could learn from what things he lived through. We won't have near the riches or near the power he had, but what riches and power we do have, we can learn from his extreme experience. Guys, it is a beautiful day out. Shall I wait to the end of this? I'll wait to the end of this. No, I'll show it to you now. Because it's a blue sky. Here goes. There is the blue sky. It's springtime, and there's a little green grass. Well, green getting there. And I'm sitting near a river, and there's the blue sky. And over here, these old dry bushes, trees, they'll be beautiful after a while. Okay, I'll go back. And there we go. I'll go on with this page. Shall I show it to you? Here's the page. I read that top dark quote to you. Now I'll read it to you. Yet also, in speaking of classic consumer types, there are other people who are not simply mistaken. These people are willing not only to wring the good out of cold, hard things, selfishly, but are also willing to wring the good out of people and out of other living things as well. Such abusers of life and beauty often manage to appear really sweet and wonderful at first. They've studied life long enough to know how to imitate it temporarily. I put this further back. Temporarily, for their own purposes, for using and abusing purposes. These people are found in all walks of life, and they cover their real intentions incredibly well sometimes. And it's not just individuals, but whole groups of individuals and companies and even industries that have dedicated themselves to the selfish use and abuse of things that God intended for good. Yet many people are taken unawares, because the users often seem so intelligent, so refined, or even so nice. Oh, that's a noisy vehicle going by. Or even so nice. So we must warn each other, remind each other, and help each other. And we must pray for the Lord to help us and protect us, not just as we seek living stuff, but as we seek to live, which involves growing and giving, more than taking and using. Then between lines I wrote, actually there are more things to consider, but since writing can and reading can be interrupted and rearranged for the benefit of digestion, as well as for comfort and convenience, it seems that I ought to do just that. Perhaps it's because, as I've mentioned, I'm not much of a reader myself, and when I reread this, though each of the ideas is simple enough in itself, it just gets to be too much and too monotonous to keep at it. So, whenever you want, you can go find the second leg of this journey of thought, quote unquote. As yet, I'm not sure just where I'll put it, but it shouldn't be far away. And then more Bible verses at the bottom. 1 John chapter 2, verses 15 through 17. Love not the world, neither the things that are in the world. If any man love the world, the love of the Father is not in him. For all that is in the world, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life, is not of the Father, but is of the world. And the world passeth away, and the lust thereof. But he that doeth the will of God abideth forever. End quote. That's 1 John 2, verses 15 through 17. Good to pay attention to. Okay, here comes. I'm just going to go on and read to you. And I wish I could just let you look at the sky. How about I let you look at the sky for a while? Well, wait, there's this. See, that's what I'm going to be reading to you. And down at the bottom, there is a list. So I'll turn it to that after a while. But I'll let you look at the river and sky. Well, here I'll start up again. And maybe I should remind everybody before I go on that it's hard to write. It's some kind of major difficult to put your thoughts on paper for all the world to see and to criticize. That's why most people, including me, will hardly ever do it. And many people play it really safe and never write at all. After writing Volume 1 of Writing in the Grace of God, I got scolded quite a bit for apologizing too much in it. And I can't help but be sorry for the inconvenience that it caused. There, I'm apologizing again. But hey, you guys ought to try this stuff sometime. You readers ought to try writing, especially without a backer. 'Cause if you do have a backer, that is, somebody who really believes in you, somebody who can go on to reshape and fine-tune what you've written, it might indeed look sleek and refined, and it won't need apologies. Me? I've got a family that loves me and has some respect for my heart and mind. Not so much that they would say so, but enough that they'll listen to my comments and treat me kindly and even seek my advice now and then. Not that my advice is worth all that much. It's just real and seriously thought out and prayed about. And they know that my advice will be backed by my prayers for those to whom I give it. Again, that's not saying much, but it is real. Here, I'll turn it back again. I do have God's backing me. I do have God backing me. That's who has done the most to encourage me to get these things written down. But it's not like he just encourages. No, siree. He helps you do what you should do, while all along the way he helps you to get to know yourself better and helps you grow. And that's painful, because you get to see and deal with your mistakes a lot. Maybe that's how come all those apologies, because I know you deserve them. Because though he encourages a person to write good things, he still won't stop you from making mistakes. So if you find something here to criticize, that's reasonable. But if you find something here that's worthwhile, thank the Lord that he helped me to get it written down. Without that stern but gentle hand on my shoulder, I wouldn't have had the nerve to try. So here we'll start again with that tour of discovery called Rose and Sword. Well now, if you don't mind, we'll partly turn a corner and see how emotions and states of being fit on this scale of things. Here, a minute ago, people were walking by over there, and I didn't want you to be bothered or them to be bothered either, so I swept it back to me. But here now, I'm gonna move it. Okay, now. There it is. Okay, I'll hold it here and then I'll look around it. The rose, the wind is blowing. So I roll up the window. I think I better first look out it, then roll it up. It's a little bit darker, but not a whole lot. But the wind won't blow it. I know that. Okay. So then, rose living on one side and sword non-living on the other side. Two lists. On the rose living side, there's love. So this is about emotions and states of being. Shall I go down that list? Rose and living. There's love. There's affection and admiration. There's joy. It has to do with a rounded overflow of emotion. Healthy laughter and outspreading release of pressure is a healthy laughter. And peace, serenity, and rest. Whereas on the sword, non-living side, here I'll just close in on that one. There's hate, which is a kind of destroying emotionally. Lust and craving, which is a kind of taking or wanting to. Excitement has to do with an intense compression of emotion. Ridicule, as opposed to on the other side, was healthy laughter. Ridicule, ride, means to laugh in Romanian, I know. So from the Latin, probably, ridicule means laughing, but laughing at. It's a focused application of pressure. That's how I saw fit to put it. At the bottom, opposite peace, serenity, and rest, the sword non-living side is more like shock, stupor, or numbness. So you see how they're similar, and yet they're so different, like the two kinds of beauty of rose and of sword. So similar, yet so different. Affection and admiration is a giving of appreciation, whereas lust and craving is wanting to take what you appreciate. Okay. Okay, so then I'll go on. I'll change this back and go on. There are other things, but here I'd better mention that I don't consider myself any final authority on these things, but rather I'm offering these things for consideration. It's not like I myself, being only a small part of the lively things on this planet, can pick up and put great realities, which I capitalize merely for emphasis and to improvise a proper noun to call them by. It's not like I can pick up and put great realities into categories that I have fashioned for my own purposes. But if, generally speaking, there really are real things that fit into real categories, our thoughtfully considered makeshift models might help us to perceive what's really going on. Or anyways, they might help us to perceive something useful. I'll put that page over there and pick up, now there is a whole nother list. I'll turn it back. And first you see the blue sky, and then I'll focus on the list. How am I going to do this? I wish I knew. And then there are also these. So always rose is in the first column on the left, and always sword is the second column on the right. And back and forth, they are similar. And this is, what I said was emotions, feelings, states of being. Okay, here goes. On the rose side, patience is a soft, steady holding on. On the sword side, impatience, a hard, quick break. Rose, encouragement. Sword, criticism. Rose, stability, neutral, at rest, unagitated. Sword, instability, very acidic or caustic, agitated. faith and confidence as opposed to doubt and confusion, meekness and courage on the rose side, pride and cowardice on the sword side, planting, investing as opposed to sword, gambling, depending on luck. Then there's, here if I can get it closer, then there's forgiveness on the rose side and revenge on the sword side. On the rose side, use. On the sword side, abuse. And here are some other things to consider. As I already said, it's not like I'm a final absolute. It's something to consider. You might disagree with it. You might find better words to use or considerations. Just doing my best and handing them to you. Here you go. Next grouping. Integrity and integration. Smooth, flowing, e.g., a whole organism will generally function well and grow. On the sword side, disintegrity, disintegration. That's a breaking down, e.g., a torn organism will not function well nor grow. On the rose side, health, warm, growing, responding. On the sword side, sickness is not warm, it's hot, cold, struggling even to keep alive, not largely able to respond. Then on the rose side, growth, building, improving. On the sword side, corruption, breaking, rotting. On the rose side, non-fiction, that's truth. On the sword side, fiction, which is mixed up man-made truth, man-made stuff, stories. On the rose side, natural. On the sword side, artificial. Okay, I'm going to go back to reading then. To switch it back to me. That non-fiction, fiction part has made me stop and think. I've commented to my family on occasion that some fiction books, especially the classics, so well describe the reality of life that fiction barely describes them, whereas some non-fiction books so poorly describe the reality going on that they barely deserve the title of non-fiction. But generally, these categories seem to fit well on either side of the list, as man-made characters, adventures, and scenarios are generally rigged one way or another for clarity or convenience, etc., and so they have not the touch with real life and its important complexities that nonfiction has. But there's one thing that has me puzzled. Why do writers of important truths so often mix their messages with stuff that is obviously untrue or impossible, like fables do, for instance? And then there are other things. It's getting a little warm in here, so I'm going to put the window down, and I think the breeze will blow through. Okay, I hope so. Without blowing too hard. It just comes and goes. Okay. But there... Gotta find where I was. Why do writers of important truths so often mix their messages with stuff that is obviously untrue or impossible? Like fables do, for instance. You know, like, I better leave it. And then there are other things, like fairy tales and science fiction stories, that may also teach good morals or illustrate social dynamics and human nature with a clear desire to instruct and benefit people. Yet they do the same thing, purposely mixing truth with untruth. But I suppose that having the characters played by animals or unrealistic creatures set in a never-never land puts the whole scenario at a distance from the reader, allowing for perspective and providing a sort of anonymity on one hand, while supplying a curiosity factor on the other. So in a way, I kind of understand. But it's often hard for people to separate the good truth they're learning from the impossible stuff that makes it more palatable. More palatable. Kind of reminds you of when people add sugar to something, you know? It makes it taste better, but it's not as good for you. Oftentimes, the sugar is really not so good. Try honey. But, okay. Oh no, I didn't. So, in a way, I kind of understand. But it's often hard for people to separate the good truth they're learning from the impossible stuff that makes it more palatable. So then, why do writers use it? Like, for instance, there was one character in a classic who was always precise and punctual, unrealistically so. Yet this was the major mover for the plot. Namely, could the hero get to the finish line? Change pages here. Could the hero get to the finish line on time and in character? That question moves you through the book remarkably quickly. But I know of one reader who was so impressed by this character that he seriously considered taking up the pursuit of being unrealistically precise and punctual himself, until it occurred to him that this was only a ruse that was used to hook and entertain the reader. No one could really be all that precise and punctual and still be as warm as and flexible as this character seemed to be, because real life just will not support both ends of that spectrum so fully as to allow it. But this reader, in understanding the dynamics, got off that hook more quickly than most. So in this I see a real danger in mixing truth with fantasy for those who write to be a benefit. And indeed, do they write to be a benefit when their writing so strongly encourages the reader to follow after useless or damaging pursuits? I guess that's part of what puzzles me. That's where the sayings of Jesus differ remarkably from the sayings of many other wise teachers. He stated the truth and told parables, and he set reality in reality and truth with truth, so as to make clear what he was trying to present. Yet he himself understood that there would be some who could not or would not understand, and that was okay with him, as he was content to let the Holy Spirit reveal or conceal things as he saw fit, according to the individual circumstances. Yet in the book of Revelation, the Lord showed the Apostle John many things in pictures that keenly represent the reality that the Lord wanted John to understand, stating plainly that such pictures, often of animals, were figures of other things, as in a kind of allegory of sight and not of writing. Because he showed it to him. He didn't write it or tell it to him in words. He showed him the pictures of sight and not of writing. So again, fiction and figure of speech, though on the sword side of the list, can be used to clarify things quickly for some, while leaving uninformed those who cannot or will not see. But God looks after his people, so there is no danger of really losing out if you're loving him with all your heart and mind and soul and strength. Of course, fantasy for fantasy's sake will always be around, like cotton candy. A very little of it can be fun and educational, especially if you examine it and learn how it's made. But a lot is not a good idea. And besides, much of fantasy is delirium and dizziness, and much is mixed with downright poison, till no amount of it is recommendable. In thinking about nonfiction and fiction, I began to wonder if I should go on to write truth on the rose side and lie on the sword side. But somehow they didn't quite seem to be opposites. Kind of like how darkness isn't the opposite of light, but rather that darkness is the absence of light. And how black, in some sense, is not a color, but is rather the absence of color. So I took the question to the Lord and asked, if that's the case, Lord, then what, if anything, would be on the sword side opposite truth, with a capital T, truth? And lo and behold, he began to help me understand. I must say Talking with the Lord is in a lot of ways like talking to your best friend. You can't remember every last word exactly, and it's hard to remember the order of ideas. And why, you may ask, do I think that God talked to me in the first place? Well, I figure that as He already gets lots of credit for having made our brains and sustained our existence, and for having given us the raw ideas to think about, that He gets a lot of the credit for our mental discoveries as well. But when, on occasion, I find an idea or ideas in my mind that are clear and true and good, that don't line up with the pace and tone of my own thoughts, while being both excellent and reasonable answers to the questions that I'm working on, well, then I give Him the credit directly. He is kind, and He helps us. Often He lets us work on things at our own pace and just guides us quietly and gently. But occasionally He up and points things out, though He'll usually let you figure out the implications of the matter. Well, this time the ideas that came to mind did not seem like a simple product of my own thoughts, but had the tone and quality of my Father's voice. That's actually a more accurate way of explaining it, partly because it's a personal thing, and He really is a person. People leave that part out too often. It's like Jesus said, how that sheep know their shepherd's voice, and a stranger they will not follow. Next page, page 17. See John chapter 10, that a stranger they will not follow. At any rate, when I asked the Lord, what, if anything, would be on the sword side opposite truth, I was thinking of truth in the great sense, as written with a capital T. He pointed out that if truth, written with a small t, were written on the rose side, then fact should be written on the sword side. And that's all he said. That gave me things to think about, all right. First, I began to see that truth, with a capital T, is much greater and heavier and fuller than fact, and that really, truth, with a capital T, stands outside the lists, as does life and goodness and reality. And neither lie nor fact can really compete in any truly opposite fashion. So it's not truth with a capital T, but truth with a small t that we're talking about here. Yet then, of course, I wondered, but why fact? And all I can tell you is that then, in examining the two concepts, I suddenly noticed how that truth is generally full, many-layered, and connected with life, whereas fact is kind of like flat and simple and cut out of life. It stands all by its isolated self, existing, but not vitally connected with anything. Then I understood. Fact is man's work, sword stuff indeed. And it's these very factors of being cut out and simplified, distilled and refined, disconnected, hard, precise, and permanent, not to mention being easily measurable, stackable, and easily brought to market, that makes them highly sought after by man. So it does make sense that truth would be on one side and fact on the other. And it also follows the pattern we've seen, how that truth tends more toward life, and fact tends towards death. Since even true facts tend to oversimplify things and leave out the glowing highlights of life. For example, I quote, "The building will be blank stories tall," end quote. But what will it be used for? The program will cost $8.3 million. But who believes it will really help and why? Quote, "They hope to benefit the community," end quote. Tell us more, or you've told us powerful little. So facts leave out the important stuff that's really necessary. Yet even if you know all the facts and get all your questions answered in detail, still, if you haven't seen the living dynamics of the situation for yourself, and dealt with the real people involved in it, you really have a very poor grasp of what is actually going on. Don't get me wrong. Good things have come to pass through massive, though distant, effort. But many empty dreams and many harmful things have been built through blind assistance based on the stacking of facts, and through facts frosted over with flowery rhetoric. Facts and the compounding of facts, which we call statistics, can be very useful and beneficial, but because of their simple, durable, inert, precise, smooth, stackable characteristics, they are easily manipulated to achieve any purpose the user has in mind. But that's dangerous, for mankind is just too inclined to greed and power, and too easily deluded and tricked into wasting time and energy on things that are empty and dangerous. It's too inclined to lend our strength to things that we have no vital connection with, nor real life understanding of. Through the overuse of facts, they've overtaxed our ability to believe in man-made projects. Till now we seem apathetic. So then they goad us for being apathetic, till we bend in the direction they point. Yet honestly, and even historically, there comes a time when a system gets too big. And when you can see that such a system is heading in the wrong direction and hurting the people it was set up to serve, then people need to act independently again. Which reminds me of the Declaration of Independence. For life is in God and in the people themselves, and not in the mechanisms and organizations. But we must beware, for good and strong people, people who still benefit from the system, will consider you a traitor to a good enough system just because that system has not yet turned on them. And there is yet another thing to consider, in that people will incorporate survival mechanisms into the system that they build, which will override basically anything, including the health and benefit of their creators or the other persons involved in them, in order that the systems themselves may survive. Put that page down. What time is it? Okay, doing all right. And what time? 32. I think I'll go to this next. It's weird, but it's true. Systems and organizations usually come to be largely automated and self-sufficient, and such a system will come to exist as an entity which is entirely separate from the individuals who created it or who presently represent or sustain it. I guess that's why companies and industries and governments, etc., can come to be users and abusers and consumers in their own right, even when the ones running them aren't really bad people, and especially when some of them are. And it may be that we must leave a system, even though it's not completely gone bad. Same like with an individual. You can't wait till the person is murdering 24 hours a day before you stop him. If he's begun to kill, or even to do major damage, he's got to be stopped, even if he is nice and polite the rest of the time. Of course, it can be difficult to know just when to call it quits. But God is there, and we can ask him, when should we quit? And quit then. And what should we do? And do that. 'Cause he knows more than we'll ever be able to figure out. And besides, he rarely just hands you orders. Most often, he just helps you to see what you need to see and points out which issues are most important. He's a good friend and a wise advisor. The best, really. Well, somewhere along the line, in thinking about nonfiction and fiction, and truth and fact, I also got to wondering, Lord, then where do lies come in? Surely they would be on the sword side. But what then would be on the rose side? as you've already indicated that they don't fit directly opposite truth. Then, much to my surprise, he explained that, like darkness, lies are nothing in themselves. They are nothing substantial. They use bits of truth. Indeed, truth is where a lie gets much of its strength. And they also use bits of unconnected reality to give a false impression and lead in a wrong direction. I have to hold this, so there you go. And it shakes somewhat. My hand shakes, oh dear. And the lies also use bits of unconnected reality to give a false impression and lead in a wrong direction. And dishonest people will often use honest people to broadcast their deceptions in hopes that those people's honest faces and earnest tones of speech will be associated with the information they want conveyed. Information, too, might find its place on the sword side of things, it seems, as it's something cut away and distilled from the whole reality that it was originally found in. And news is not always a matter of full truth either, come to think of it. Then what would go opposite them? Maybe first-hand experience, opposite information, and personal testimony, opposite news. They do kind of fit the bill, it seems. Okay, another about a page long, 2 half pages. But to get back on the subject, a lie can be written down, and so it seems to be very substantial. But its essence is a matter of illusion. And when you try to weave illusion in with reality, you weaken what you're trying to build. And so lies, though being nothing in themselves, tend to damage things. They even have the power to destroy enterprises and kill relationships if they are not recognized and dealt with. Because lies lead to the death of understanding, then the death of communication, and then eventually the death of the relationship. And the death of hopes and aspirations happens too, as the energy that could have been used to grow proper things is redirected into empty things and damaging things, which wear you out, and so you're left empty, disheartened, and injured. So it's the strong connection that a lie has with death and destruction, and the cut and dry distance that it has from life that cause it to line up more with the sword side, even though it doesn't properly fit there, being nothing in itself. It is interesting, yet sad, to consider that choosing lies and darkness and death is a kind of emptying of something into nothing, where something that could have had value, like truth with a capital T, and capital light and capital life, were neglected or mistreated or consumed down to nothing worth noting. Such power we have, such power we wield, daily, hourly, minute by minute, to build and to create good things, and to work with life, or to pull down and to damage good things, and to work towards death. And maybe someone might think that I'm over-amplifying the matter, but I do believe that the matter exists in all its enormity. It's just invisible to our physical eyes. And since we often prefer to deal with visible things, we discount its reality and its importance. And all the while, God watches our goings on. So quiet is he with the greatest voice. So patient is he with the greatest power. So determined is he who would know, without doubt, what end we each will choose, life or death. And he lets the thorns and the thistles grow here on earth, and pain and sorrow too. And he allows violence and destruction and murder, yet nothing eternal shall perish. Even someone dies, even murdered. He takes that person to judgment, and if they were someone who use their life, towards God, towards kindness, truth, love. That is solid stuff. And he'll make right decisions. And some people are 50-50. That's scary. But we all make mistakes and do poorly now and then, even if we're trying hard to do good. And like I said earlier, even those who are trying hard to win everything and to do, they now and then do good things. But God knows, and God gets to judge. Jesus gets to judge because he lived here on earth, knows what it's like. And he can see our guts, our brains, our hearts. I better go on with this. Yet nothing eternal shall perish, because anything good, he'll do rightly by it. For eternal things are made of eternal stuff, which is used and built and grown in the direction of life, so that at the end of their earthly career, any person, anything that is life, that is good, so that at the end of their earthly career, they come into his hands again, to be set in honor, and to proceed, and to flourish in life, capital life, while destruction and death are left far behind, as nothing to be considered. As it says in Malachi chapter 3, verse 17, quote, "And they shall be mine," speaking of people who do rightly, who do follow God. Quote, "And they shall be mine, saith the Lord of hosts, in that day when I make up my jewels, and I will spare them, as a man spareth his own son that serveth him." End quote. And it says, and as it says also in the next chapter, quote, "For behold, the day cometh that shall burn as an oven, and all the proud, yea, and all that do wickedly, shall be stubble." Stubble means dry weeds, nothing. Shall be stubble. "And the day that cometh shall burn them up, saith the Lord of hosts, that it shall leave them neither root nor branch. But unto you that fear my name," that fear God, like, oh Lord, respect him, reverence him. "But unto you that fear my name shall the Son of Righteousness arise, with healing in his wings. And ye shall go forth and grow up as calves of the stall." End quote. That's Malachi chapter 4, verses 1 and 2. Calves of the stall, sheltered and cared for. Life on earth is tough at times, but God knows what he's doing. Unlike us, life eternal and not present happiness is the goal he has most on his mind. At the bottom I put of this half of the page, this would seem a good place to stop, but that would make this section awfully short, and I think it would end up breaking this journey into more than 3 pieces, and that would be a bit much. So we'll call this a pause, and you can start up again if you like, whenever you're ready. And so I put white lines and a line in between. So I'm gonna stop this. Let's see. 43 minutes and 38 seconds. Shall I show you some more? It's all out there the whole time I'm here, and sometimes people walk by, and sometimes people, oh, that smudge is on the windshield. Oh, okay, I'll get it out of the way. But that's all around here. And in back of me, it's much the same too. Let's see. And you see me, but you also see in back. See, same stuff. Okay, but 44. Maybe I should have stopped it at 44. I should have. Oops. Let me try this again. And the blue sky. Okay. 44. How about that? We'll try it. Thank you for listening, and I'll be doing the more in just a minute if I can. Okay, bye-bye. Wait, 44 is coming up.